we're hardwired for connection. Like at the end of the day, we're animals, we're tribal by nature, safety and belonging. And like, when you're an outsider of a group, you're vulnerable. If you're in the woods and you're kind of alone, you're vulnerable. If you're at work and you have no friends, you're vulnerable to like not moving up, not being accepted, not getting the good deals. Like connection really, really matters. And it matters like for a whole bunch of different reasons.
Hi, I'm Jim McCann, founder of 1-800-Flowers. We created this podcast to share the wonderful people we get to interact with, we get to meet, we get to know, and most importantly, get to learn from. So I invite you to join us on this journey here on the Celebrations Chatter podcast. Well, I'm here today with Dr. Bobbi Wegner, a new friend. Dr. Wegner has been doing some amazing things in areas I'm very, very interested in. But let's learn a little bit about you, Dr. Bobbi. A native of Massachusetts, still in Massachusetts, raising your family with your husband Mark there in Massachusetts. Bobbi, the last time we chatted, you were in France right before the Olympics.
Right before the Olympics, and it's one of my favorite places to visit, and got some time to go over there, and a good friend was there too, and we were able to, actually take some time in startup. It's hard to really break away. So I was like, if we're going to go over there and I'm going to work anyway, why not actually just stay? So we stayed for 3 weeks, which feels super indulgent to say out loud, but it was awesome.
But what intrigued me about the idea of your trip to France, and it seems like everyone's going to Europe someplace or another now. I hear Lisbon a lot. But I've not been, but I hear a lot of people going to Lisbon. Is that you and Mark have been deliberate about exposing your kids to other cultures, other languages, and your kids are all studying French?
They are. They're all fluent. I live in a town called Milton. It's one out of 2 towns in Massachusetts in the public school where you can opt into French immersion. So starting first day of first grade, it's 100% immersion unless there's an emergency in the classroom.
Wow.
So it's kind of like sink or swim, but it's really how you learn. My oldest kid is pretty dyslexic, and so we weren't sure. We discovered that in first grade, and, the school was sort of encouraging us to, kind of switch to the English track. But I did a lot of research really looking into Canadian schools that have more research around dual language programs. And I was like, there's so much value to be had here. So we kind of took a risk, and he's like, it was the best thing. He's just flourishing right now. And I think a big part of it was he had to learn how to do things differently and how to do the hard work of the first couple of years of learning how to basically code switch, learn 2 different codes, like learn English, learn French when he had a language-based learning deficit. But now we're kind of on the other side of it, and I would do it again 10 times over.
No dyslexia that we know of in my family, but I'm learning a lot about it because a friend of mine who I had the pleasure to introduce you to, Dr. George Everly, grew up severely dyslexic, and to hear his journey about how to take advantage of the neuroplasticity and to basically rewire his brain. So here's a man that couldn't read a book until he was in college, has now written 29, and I'm proud to say the 29th I was lucky enough to be asked to co-author with him. Working with him has been extraordinary, but learning a lot about dyslexia.
My second kid has sort of raging ADHD. It's sort of a similar type thing. And for both of them, I'm like, this is actually a blessing. You're forced to learn how you have this gift of learning differently than other people, which allows you to create and build differently. And so our challenge right now is to get you through, education spaces where the system is really shaped to teach the majority. And so that's going to be hard for you, but that's okay. People with ADHD and dyslexia are the entrepreneurs of the world because they're thinking differently. And so can we help children see themselves this way and not internalize sort of because it's hard. I was seeing it in my youngest son before we switched schools, he was starting to doubt himself because he felt stupid, I think. And he sort of said this in so many words. And I was like, this isn't you. This isn't a match between what you need and the system you're in. So we've got to figure out a different way. But I think it's 88% of our jails are filled with people with dyslexia, which has never been treated. And then it kind of morphs into behavioral problems and emotional problems. So if we can just help people see it differently, I think we could solve a whole bunch of problems.
We have a program at the Flowers companies, where we look for all year long stories about amazing moms. We had a young man nominate his mom. His name is Jordan Toma, and he has raging ADHD, and it affected him his whole life. And his mom just stuck with him, pushed, to the point where she drove him to a special college in New Jersey, where they're from, drove him there and forced him out of the car to go talk to somebody there. And they said, okay, we'll let you take this summer program. And if you can pass the summer program, we'll let you come into the college. He took a class, and then immediately after a class, he had a session at least as long, maybe longer, with a tutor who is trained especially in dealing with people with dyslexia and ADHD. And he got his first A in anything, that paper, went into college, and now he spends his time. He's a financial advisor. He's married. He has a couple of kids, just bought a home. And he uses his time to go around the country speaking to kids in schools, telling them, this is my story, you can change too. And he's spoken at hundreds and hundreds of high schools, and it's his mission this year to speak to every high school in the state of New Jersey.
Wow. Mike, how can we help him accomplish that? I feel like I'd happy to connect and post about him, or I should have him come. You're coming to my organizational psychology class, but he could come. I teach another class in the School of Education at Harvard, which is Groups and Culture to Promote Social Change for Children and Families.
Another introduction I'll be happy to make. He's a very accomplished young man. His mom, a terrific mom, and we're so pleased to have featured her in our Amazing Moms program. You mentioned he came to New York for 10 years. You got your PhD where, Bobbi?
William James College. So there's 2 years I was commuting between Boston and New York, driving back and forth. So Mark and I were like dating. He was working in the investment banking world. I was getting my doctorate, and it was just, we're both working like wild hours. And so I commuted for 2 years. But, it allowed me to study for my licensure exam and listen to a bunch of books. Like it sounds more dire than it was.
And you did a couple of years at Mount Sinai doing your APA internship, didn't you?
So I was at Mount Sinai Medical Center doing, my APA internship. I did, they have a wonderful program. So I'm a health psychologist by training. So I work, previously with a lot of medical populations, but a lot of that is actually preventative wellness too, thinking about lifestyle behaviors, community, that kind of thing. And so I did an externship there working with people who had traumatic brain injury, but living in the community and trying to figure out how to navigate this new norm and doing a lot of neuropsych testing. And then I did my APA internship there, kind of inpatient, working bedside with people who had new spinal cord injuries, new traumatic brain injuries, just like people have had really bad things happen unexpectedly. And now they're quadriplegic or, have a brain injury, and trying to figure out how, just to work with them and help them the best we could, basically.
But now you're teaching at a little place, what's it called, Harvard?
Harvard in Cambridge.
What school are you teaching in there, and what are you teaching?
I teach both in the School of Education. Really, I used to lead a strand there called advocacy. So it's like, how do you make large systems change? By breaking it down into small steps. I'd written a parenting book, really helping parents kind of help build kids, but primarily boys, to really be advocates.
Very, very provocative topic.
Yeah.
I know it came out in 21, and it was called Raising Feminist Boys.
Exactly. People
now,
are
you
like,
did that
who
just
wants
to
a feminine
stoke the
boy?
fires.
Yeah. People thought I was like undoing masculinity or something. I'm like, no, I love guys. Guys are great. Sign me up all day long. Being a feminist means really advocating for equality for everyone, really with a focus on gender equality. And so knowing this really came out sort of around the Me Too movement, knowing that 1 in 4 women are victims of rape, which that sort of just was mind blowing to me. And I was like, wow, that's like so many people. And then I got very interested in when is this happening? How is this happening? Realizing a lot of sort of rapes and sexual assaults happen. They're like crimes of opportunity, where it's basically misinformed boys taking advantage of situations in high school and college, really lacking the sort of empathy to understand the impact. So it's like, okay, how can I think about, this is more like kind of a passion project, but how can I help parents understand moral and identity development at a younger age and help them get comfortable talking about things like sex and gender and empathy and other, to help mitigate, thinking about parenting as an agent of social change. And then giving a framework, because a lot of parents are like, I don't want to talk to my 8-year-old about sex. This is like so uncomfortable. But there's a way to do it that's developmentally appropriate that doesn't have to be uncomfortable. And
so the kids won't sit there and say, yeah, I remember the talk.
Yeah, it's not
it's
talk.
Evolutionary. Yeah.
It's just part of conversation. And so parents need to understand like how to have those conversations over time. So that really was like trying to be a helpful tool for parents to talk about these things.
Give us some anecdotal insights into how the book has been received.
It's actually been received pretty well. So I was launching Groops like at the same time of this. So my focus wasn't really totally on like really selling the book. And, I didn't do a book tour or anything like that, which I still feel like I should do. But it's been translated into Japanese, which was really fun and funny. A big bag of books showed up on my doorstep one day. And I emailed my agent. I was like, did my book get translated? She's like, I don't know. Let me email the editor. And like, oh yeah, it got translated into Japanese. And then in Australia, there's things changing politically over there. So a bookseller over there kind of put me on a PR tour there, which is pretty cool. So I've gotten the kindest notes from parents, though, is the most meaningful, just about how it's given them words and like understanding of both the impact they can make, but also like tangible ways to actually have these conversations.
Sounds like just a desired impact that you were hoping for, huh?
Yeah. It's always just like, my thing's always like, what do I love to do? And then how can I help is sort of the perspective so I'll see something that interests me. Like the way this book came about was I was listening to NPR, my middle kid who was 6 at the time, some news came on talking about the Me Too movement and Harvey Weinstein and all this stuff. And I was like, oh God, you got to go like turn this down. But I kind of caught myself and I realized like, this is the problem. We're actually shutting down conversations rather than moving towards them with our kids. So I kept the radio on and I sort of invited him to listen with me and then asked him, sort of what he thought. And the thing that was like most struck me was that he was like, oh, I said, this guy's in big trouble. He was touching women when they didn't want to be touched and saying things that were making people feel uncomfortable. And he said, that's illegal. I didn't know that. Like, didn't our president do that? And I was like, wow. So he's taken in this information without not coming from me, from the external world
and without context.
So now he thinks that effectively sexual harassment and sexual assault is legal because he's heard about it, internalized that it's okay because the president was sort of doing it. And so I got very curious about how kids take in information, how it shapes their identity and their moral and sexual development. And then when do we have to have conversations? Because we're waiting to have these conversations in high school. And at that point, the peer group becomes the influencer. So we have to like do it earlier when we still have sort of a front seat in our kids, prefrontal cortex and decision-making and all those things.
Oh, it's so interesting. And it sounds so logical.
It's kind of like a no-brainer. It's like what I love about psychology, it's not rocket science. It's like very logical. It's in front of us. But when you can start to see it and understand it, it can actually have a huge impact. And when you can help people put words to the feelings that they sort of like feel, but don't know like what to do or what it is, you can like really help people and help myself. It's not just others, like helps me, show up in the world.
Tell us about Groops, and it's spelled Groops. And one O is green and one O is purple, which is nice because those are the flowers' colors, just saying.
Those are great colors. So Groops were really, there's a longer story. Right around that time, we launched as a direct-to-consumer wellness app, effectively trying to scale support groups for everyday issues. That's like a whole other story I can tell you about. The long story short is we were testing with companies in the backdrop, really seeing as COVID was breaking and virtual world was sort of shifting and people are moving remote, we were just seeing the impact of disconnection all over the place. And so we were testing, like, what's it like if you really bring psychologists or experts in psychology who have a master's or a doctorate to office to work with teams across the organization, not just with executives, really with the goal of deepening connection on teams. And so you might be thinking like, all right, like, is this just totally like a feel-good thing, or like, why would any company pay for this? And it's really because social relationships mediate all outcomes. So business outcomes, from profitability to satisfaction to engagement to retention to profitability, even so, retention. And we don't really kind of muddy the story with this, but it impacts wellness outcomes too. So Vivek Murthy is very much focused on this as like an intervention for health outcomes. It's like, how do you actually build stronger relationships to mitigate isolation, disconnection? We're doing it in the office and basically getting companies to pay for it because it affects business outcomes.
I think he's been courageous and appropriately forceful in his opining about the epidemic of loneliness in this country, and I think it's sort of like one of those aha kind of moments when a Surgeon General, and you look at what Surgeon Generals have impacted our public policy in this country for forever. And I can think back to banning smoking and things like that, and the huge impact that's had over the course of my lifetime in terms of its change in society and health outcomes. And now I think it's so appropriate, especially in a post-COVID environment, that he is taking a leadership position and using his platform to advocate for collectively new thinking around relationships, mental health, loneliness, and community. And that's what you're trying to do for companies. And I think that's really, really interesting. And the fact that you're doing it with professionals, looking through the materials on your company, it's really, really interesting. So tell us what stage the company's at now. You mentioned that you pivoted from being to being focused on businesses because you could go in and make measurable impacts. You could work with a company for a period of time and show them demonstrably the benefits of change. And where do you define what changes you hope to have and those that you think you're able to effectively measure?
We pivoted almost exactly 2 years ago, and we put out a call for pilots, like right around then, being like, all right, is this even a thing? We had spent money building a platform on this earlier iteration that we effectively had to shut down. And we're like, okay, we don't want to build out this big platform until we know that there's a need and that the service is a thing people are interested in, people are willing to pay for it. And then kind of quickly, we saw there was an interest. We got in, we did a pilot with the Air Force, Blue Cross, Optum, some big companies, Insperity, Finestra. And we're like, oh, there's a thing here. So we moved to selling subscriptions pretty quickly within 3 months or so. So we're still an early stage company, but we're we're already generating revenue and feeling good about it. And now we're really using tech in the past 2 years. Now we've been building out tech again alongside us. So it's not just the service part that we're delivering on. Being able to scale this and also deliver insights really relies on technology. So we've built a platform on the back end, which is AI driven. So all of our
We've gone 23 minutes, and that's the first mention of AI. How could it be?
I know. Kind of impossible. We've won.
But I can imagine it plays a very important and increasingly important role in your work.
We couldn't do what we're doing without AI and technology because we're surveying employees in a de-identified way on a regular basis. Or say, imagine, you have groups for your team. You have your own team psychologist effectively that's with you over the course of the year, teaching you core content in high cohesion, high performing teams. And then the most important part is like, how are you integrating this? What are the barriers? Connection and cohesion and trust is built with the sort of ongoing conversations that's had. The group guides are taking de-identified notes. We're putting it into our platform and analyzing the notes over time and integrating them with the quantitative data from the surveys and then generating de-identified insights to leadership, because now we're kind of in the corners of the company, seeing a train coming before it's arrived and then helping the company better understand their people to make kind of micro moves, really with the goal of deepening connection and cohesion. But we're seeing impact like pretty much right after the first series and seeing increases most notably in connection, belonging, and retention between 8 and 18%.
That sounds to me like the key. I think in everything, every relationship, if you feel a connection, a good, positive, healthy connection, it changes everything. It changes how you feel about yourself, how you feel about the people around you, the work that you're doing, the company that you're employed by. It just changes everything for the positive.
Yeah, we're hardwired for connection. Like at the end of the day, we're animals, we're tribal by nature, safety and belonging. And when you're an outsider of a group, you're vulnerable. If you're in the woods and you're kind of alone, you're vulnerable. If you're at work and you have no friends, you're vulnerable to like not moving up, not being accepted, not getting the good deals. Like connection really, really matters. And it matters like for a whole bunch of different reasons. But fundamentally, it's really based on like we're hardwired for connection, for safety. But we don't really think of ourselves this way.
Peel that back a little bit anthropologically, if you would. You say we're wired for connection, for safety. What does that trace back to?
Yeah, so think about like, imagine you go to a new city you've never been to, right? You're like, okay, I'm stepping into this new culture, and you feel that vigilance or alertness that you might feel. You're literally very consciously scanning, am I safe? Do I belong? Right? Because if you're not paying attention, you're vulnerable. Something bad could happen. You're not paying attention to your environment. But like when you're in those moments of hypervigilance, even sort of like anxiety a little bit, like you're not in your best creative, innovative mind because your effort's going into safety, not like thinking about what you're going to be doing in the future or how to create the best new product, right? This happens at work. We as leaders are not sending belonging cues and really leaning into building safety within the group. And so this actually is a problem of innovation because people aren't feeling like their group is trusting. So no one's going to put a big wild idea out on the table when they could be like even more kind of pushed out of the group or shamed or judged. So these like big ideas of innovation are dying on the inside of people because they're not an environment that's really promoting this.
Hi, I'm Jim McCann.
And I'm George Everly Jr.
During the COVID-19 epidemic, I stumbled upon an article that Dr. George wrote, which had a real strong impact on me in terms of how COVID was and was likely to impact our social connections, our relationships. And it really, really resonated with me. So I reached out to George, basically wrote him a fan letter, and that began our relationship.
We found a mutual interest in helping people become their best selves, especially in times of adversity.
Together, we embarked on a quest to co-write Lodestar. That journey began with countless hours of researching the most impactful self-help books out there.
Once we had our picks, we combined the science with the practical.
The result of our journey, the creation of a one-stop shop for the best of the best in self-help.
We decided to write this book to help others go from where they are to where they want to be and be the best possible selves they could be.
So if you're looking to boost your career, build stronger relationships, or simply become the best version of yourself, Lodestar is here to guide you on your path. Tell us, with the companies you've worked, what's the longest you've worked with a company so far?
I mean, since pilot, so 2 years. Yeah, we have great, people are re-upping because we're super affordable. So the way that we're able to do this is that we're bringing really high caliber experts in psychology. And you might be thinking we have a mental health crisis. Like, why would you ever be able to do this? The thing is, therapists are lonely. They're in their own private practice. You know, they generally don't work with organizations and they lack community. And like when I was in private practice, you pay for supervision. It's like anywhere between $125 and $250 an hour. So we're like, okay, we can give you that. We can upskill you in organizational psychology. We do our own super group every other week. So it's case consultation, community, and then they're getting an organization. So they're willing to reduce their pricing to basically be part of our community. And there's a lot of therapists. There's 600 to 700,000 clinicians a year in the US alone.
But that's not enough unless you're doing what you're doing and find ways to use technology to scale what they do, to use the new technologies. Because if they have to travel, that's time not spent with patients or with groups.
Exactly. So we're filling in clinicians' hours. So a lot of like the sort of better paying patients often are like kind of the worried well, or people come in the evenings and the afternoons in the clinical space. So a lot of clinicians' daytime hours, there's holes in them. But for us, we only work during the daytime. So we're like, okay, fill in your daytime hours. You're getting community. You're getting a good rate compared to some of the other large tech platforms. We really like value our people, but they're offsetting their private practice. So it ends up being kind of a win-win for everybody.
So 2 years in, what's next for the company?
So we're right at a place now. So we'd raised some initial capital, and then when SVB blew up, we're like, all right, let's not do this. People very much see us only as a service, so they're not going to want to invest here. I don't want to spend time convincing people of like the future possibility. Let's just show them. So we kind of just went out and started getting customers, and we've had success getting in with some like really big name people, which is awesome, or big name companies. So we did that, and now we're like, okay, we've built out an early platform where we can use AI to analyze our notes and use it to survey people. And now we're really building towards building on a much bigger platform to be like the global hub of workplace connection. So you know this as well as any clinician that, you know, in the psychology world, there's a lot of fragmentation around like thinking about if you're struggling with communication in the office, you're going to have a DISC assessment, right? It's expensive, it's one-off, it's not integrated. If you want your leaders to understand their personality, you're going to get MBTI. But we're building a platform where technology, we have the content and we have the knowledge to be able to generate many more assessments and surveys at a faster rate, and then integrate it into the service delivery over time. And so we're doing a pre-seed raise coming next, you know, in the fall, really to raise capital to build out the tech more. But then that's really the driver, and then just get more sales. That's kind of always.
So if a company is working with you, who do you tend to interface with?
So it's interesting. So we're still kind of figuring this out, quite honestly. It's really any C-suite or any, because we're priced so affordably, business units have budget for this. So, you know, we've had people just say, I'll just put this on my like corporate credit card as long as it's under a certain number. The people that we kind of target are like HR or L&D people. Team from a business school is actually doing analysis on us right now, which is super fun. And they're like, I think you're targeting the wrong people, like, because they're not feeling the pain of, like, the people who feel the pain are the business leaders themselves. So like just under the executives, but who have buying power, have authority, have budget. So the short answer is I have been targeting HR, C-suiters, L&D, CEOs, depending on the size of the company. But that might be changing.
You know, you mentioned before the example you used, you moved to a new city, and I was reminded of a conversation we had the other day. Frankly, it's been an ongoing conversation. One of our board members at 1-800-Flowers is a man named Adam Haft, and he's a terrific guy and really thoughtful and he's a genuine futurist. In fact, he has a partner, Faith Popcorn, who's also a futurist, and they have a podcast together called Jolty. But we were chatting the other day about what we learned during COVID about the importance of those micro-social contacts.
Exactly.
And when you move to a new place, you don't have those right away. It's like whether or not in my life we have an office space in Manhattan, and you know the doorman, you know the fellow at the security desk, and he waves and gives you good morning. You know that he has a kid that's graduating from high school next year, and he's busy looking at colleges. And hey, any trips this weekend? No, not this weekend, but next weekend we're going south. We went north. So it's the barista in your coffee shop who gives you a wave. How are you? A regular. It's when they went away during COVID, we felt the absence of those things. And that's because we always focused on the big relationships, the important relationships, friends, family, neighbors, coworkers. But you're focused on the coworker. When you come across a coworker, someone in one of the companies that you work with who's an employee there, team member, are you looking to say, do they come to the table with a good social fabric beneath them? Outside of the workplace, is that discernible to you that someone's having a difficulty beyond the workplace?
Yeah, so it's totally a mixed bag, right? It's like, we're not filtering by that at all. We're walking into a team. All this is virtual too, by the way. Well, not all of it. Sometimes because we're price low, people fly us in to do some work, but primarily virtual. You walk into a team and it's just people. It's the general population of the people in the workplace that we're serving. And so everybody has different levels of difficulty in their social world. So because of that, we offer one-on-one coaching as part of the subscription. Really, we're like, and we end up allows us to capture kind of non-typical mental health consumers too. People would never really sign up for a therapist to get support. We're not doing therapy. We're really through the lens of like, are any of these issues interrupting your work life? And if so it allows us to build a relationship with people and then help them get the services they need should they need it. So the people who come, it's just a really nice like way that's not scary to get to know your group guide. You can set up a little bit of time, maybe share something that's personal that you wouldn't really seek help for. But now you have somebody who can like kind of help you think about how to get more help. Or if it's not therapeutic in nature, you can still just keep meeting with your groups guide, which is totally fine too. And part of what the company's already paid for. So the company's happy.
So when we check back in on this podcast a year from now, tell us where Groops is.
Where it will be, I hope to be, I want to get to at least 1,700 individual companies pay for this, but I want to be serving at least 1,700 employees. We've already served about 600 or 650 of those people. I think about 450 have been paying. So that's really the mark that we're swinging for right now, where we have really good data around satisfaction and connection levels. And so I want to keep where we are. Like, I think we can keep where we are actually, even at scale. So those are the two big markers. And then we want to build out tech more. So those are and right now it's founder-led sales. We haven't really marketed. So we've got to build out strategies and hire people to basically do that to move faster.
And by the way, this AI, not cheap.
No. So, I mean, tech in general is not cheap. So we have
but it's essential.
It is. It just is. So, I mean, you know this is part of why I just love listening to your story is like taking a service-based model, but technology is how you grow it. So we always believe that like what we're solving is a human problem that needs to be solved by humans, but technology and AI just enables it and makes us serve more people, allows us to serve more people.
You know what's fun now is we've been on to AI for a long time, but my head's really been dunked in it the last 6 months or so, and doing my best to learn and to keep up. But here at the 1-800-Flowers companies or at the Worth Media Group, to see people like my team at Flowers just this week really jumping into using AI in their everyday functions, they're giddy. They're giddy because now they have the tools, and so I do a lot of dictating and to make good use of my time. So over the weekend, it doesn't turn off. So there's usually big files dropped on people on Monday with correspondence at all. And now they're using it to make it to do the editing, to do the spell checking and the format suggestions. Say, well, I ran it through Copilot, and it's suggesting maybe there's one other point you might want to put. Yeah, that's a good idea. Ada. So they're like giddy with it. And we keep kidding one another saying, how do it know?
I mean, it's the best right now. So the way we're using it is to look at themes across teams and then across the organization.
Find a pattern.
Yeah, and find the patterns. Now we can see patterns within organizations at scale that are really focused on connectedness and cohesion that are tied to all these other things. But the more we're training our model, then we can give better recommendations. So we still very much are of like psychologists reading anything that we're delivering back to any companies right now. But we're training and be like, wow, there's actually like a great recommendation I've never thought of or I wouldn't think about in this situation.
I bet there's people you've helped in the companies you serve now. I know it's there, that you've helped in their organizational work performance situation that you've had a measurable impact on their life beyond work.
That's the driver for me. Like, it's like I had this guy who's an older gentleman. He saw Groops pop up.
Don't make fun of us old people, Bobbi. Come on.
This is my favorite guy. He's my favorite guy. So he was at a big company. He saw Groops kind of plopped on his schedule. So because it's like team building, we have really high engagement. People like kind of have to come versus generally in other things, you kind of have to opt into coaching outside, who has time. So anyway, this guy was like, God, I saw Groops plopped onto my calendar. And I really didn't want to come, but I came. And then he would come back and tell the stories about how it's changing, how he's speaking with his wife and his daughter, and it's changing their relationship. We have stories like this from a fire department we're working with. And it's just like,
I saw you were working with the fire department. I thought that was really interesting.
we were like, I don't know about this. The fire chief was in one of our classes. And so they're not virtual, but we were like, we're going to deliver this like 99% virtual house.
Yeah, it's hard to be a firefighter virtually.
No, you can't fight fires without going into a fire. But they do groups by fire station. It's like awesome. They're really on the like growing edge in the fire and rescue. I'm like trying to get the chief to write a book. He's just an amazing person. But we've done groups for leaders by fire station because they're shift workers, so that they have to get in alignment around like what they want the fire station to be. But it's these guys who would just pretty much never do this in other parts of their life, and they like love it. And we just keep expanding with them, and it's awesome.
If people in our community and our audience want to get in touch with Groops, how do they do that?
Yeah, so people can check out our website. It's www.joingroups.com. Or honestly, just
No you, 2 O's.
No you, but just also I'm very accessible, happy to help anyone I can. It's Bobbi, BOBBI.W @joingroups.com. So if, you even just want to talk about an issue you're seeing in your organization and just need someone to think alongside you, happy to do that.
That's great of you to do. Now, you've done a couple of TED Talks, too. How might people see those? And what were you, I think one was on your book.
Yeah. So they're all on. I basically did that. So a publisher approached me after the TED Talk, actually. That I was interested in this. I was invited to do I think 4 TED Talks on the same topic in different cities. So they're all on the same topic. But I really want to do one on groups and, groups like building connection in the workplace and just in how do you build communities from a psychology-based lens. So that's on my agenda.
Our friends at Worth Media Group would love to follow the work you're doing because in that community at the Worth Media Group, it's a lot of business owners, small and not so small business owners, and there's so many of them can benefit from the work you're doing. So I'm sure they'll want you to contribute there too. You've done so many things as such a young person. I can't wait to come and visit with your class.
I can't wait.
That'll be fun, and that'll be heretofore I haven't been allowed anywhere near the Harvard campus because they know my academic record.
Oh my gosh, me too. I couldn't get into Harvard. Somehow I squeaked through the cracks of teaching there. But I can't wait. I've just appreciated getting to know you. You're definitely my favorite person of this year. I'm like, how you were.
Well, that's quite an honor.
Like it's a joke among. I told Charlotte, our COO, today I was like, I'm doing the podcast with Jim McCann today, and she's like teasing me because I always talk about this amazing person I've met and how generous. But you've been such a model for me of how do you actually build a business, also not coming in your early days from a business background, and really, but I just see it as such an asset actually. And how do you actually understand your people and your customers and using that lens to build a great business?
I think the big turning point for us was when we stopped thinking of our customers as customers and started thinking of them as members of a community of like-minded people who want to have more and better relationships in their life. And that was a great unlock for all of us.
I mean, that's just so helpful. And I think that's so true. People want deeper connections and better relationships to feel and work their best. Where we all want that in whatever capacity.
Well, it seems we're going about the same thing, helping people to have more and better relationships, because at the end of the day, that's all that really matters. Dr. Bobbi Wegner, you're doing some great work. You're a terrific person all around, as a teacher, educator, as a mom, as a business person, an entrepreneur. Writer, lecturer. Wow.
Oh my gosh.
What do you do in your spare time?
I mean, kind of this. This brings me energy. It's I love it.
Wait, how's the garden at home?
Oh, terrible. Terrible. My father-in-law comes over and deals with it, and it's terrible. I cook and eat. That's my favorite thing aside from all this.
Good. Well, enjoy the last few days of summer with that family of yours, and I can't wait to see you in the fall, and can't wait to introduce you to all of our community.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. Keep up the awesome work and you have your hands in everything. And I appreciate all you're doing for everybody. And thanks for kind of letting me in.
Thanks, Dr. Bobbi.
We put our heart into everything we do. We are farmers, bakers, florists and makers who grow and create with a passion. Made with love at every step of the way. Because at the end of the day, we know you're sending more than a gift. 1-800-Flowers, share with love.
Well, I hope you enjoyed what you heard, and I know I'll be sharing it forward. I hope you get to as well. Let's keep the conversation going. Follow me along on Twitter at Jim1800Flowers and on LinkedIn at Jim McCann. Hope to talk to you soon.